I earned $250,000 a year. Now I can't even pay rent. My name is Jacob. I was a tech consultant who wore tailored suits and signed six-figure contracts from a downtown apartment with views that made people jealous. Today I'm counting coins for coffee and sleeping where the city forgets to look. You want to know how? It didn't happen overnight. It started with a single bet I told myself was just entertainment. Pocket change when you're billing $250,000. But wins whispered lies, and losses demanded answers. I chased what I'd lost, then chased the feeling of winning, then chased anything that felt like control. My daughter's calls went quiet. My mother's voice got worried. My bank account learned the word zero. I kept thinking I was too smart, too credentialed, too successful to fall this far. I was wrong. Let me take you back to the night I told myself. This is my rent money, but I can make it back. When the gap between a penthouse and a shelter is just one string of bad bets. What goes first? Your savings, your family, or the person you swore you'd never become? March in Seattle came in cold and bright, the kind of morning that made the city look clean through my apartment windows. I sat at my desk with coffee still steaming in the mug, looking at a contract renewal on my laptop screen. $85,000 for 3 months of work. Cloud infrastructure consulting for a mid-sized logistics firm that was finally dragging itself into the 21st century. I'd done this dance 100 times. Scope of work, deliverables, payment terms, my signature at the bottom. I clicked the DocuSign button and watched the confirmation screen load. Money I hadn't earned yet, but money I could already count on. My phone buzzed on the desk. FaceTime from Emma. I picked it up and her face filled the screen, all freckles and missing front tooth. 11 years old and convinced she could draw better than anyone in her class. Dad, look. She held up a piece of paper covered in colored pencil. Some kind of dragon, maybe, or a really ambitious dog. Ms. Alvarez said I should enter the art contest. That's great, sweetie. I meant it. The drawing was actually good. Better than I could do. You should definitely enter. Will you come to my birthday? Mom says you missed last year. I had missed last year. I'd been in Reno that weekend, told Diane I had a work thing. Diane knew better. Emma didn't. Not yet. Of course I'll come. When is it again? Dad. It's next Saturday. I told you like 3 times. Right. Saturday. I'll be there. She smiled, held the drawing closer to the camera. I'm gonna put this one on the fridge so you can see it when you visit. We talked for another 5 minutes. She showed me her new cleats, told me about soccer tryouts, asked if I thought she'd make the team. I told her she would. After we hung up, I sat there looking at the blank screen for a while, that little flicker of guilt moving through my chest. The kind I'd gotten good at ignoring. I opened my banking app. $4,200 in checking. Not bad for mid-month, though the rent was $3,400 and due in 6 days. Car payment was another $640. I'd been carrying a balance on 2 credit cards, nothing crazy, maybe $8,000 combined. Minimum payments were manageable. The contract I'd just signed would clear in 2 weeks, first installment of $28,000 after taxes. I was fine. I was always fine. I opened a new tab and typed in FanDuel without thinking about it. The Blazers were playing the Lakers tonight. I didn't follow basketball that closely, but I knew enough. Portland was favored by 4.5. The line felt soft. I could see it moving before tip-off, maybe down to 3 if the public hammered LA. I clicked into my account. Balance, $215 from a win last week. I thought about pulling it out, letting it sit. I thought about Emma's drawing and the birthday I'd promised to show up for. Then I put $500 on the Blazers to cover. It wasn't a lot. Not for someone who billed $250,000 a year. It was entertainment. A way to make the game interesting. I told myself that every time, and most of the time I believed it. My phone buzzed again. Text from Diane. Are you actually coming Saturday, or should I tell her now, so she's not disappointed? I didn't reply. The game started in 2 hours. I'd answer after, when I knew whether I'd won. I always answered better when I'd won. I got up and poured another cup of coffee, stood at the window looking down at the street 12 floors below. People walking dogs, carrying groceries, living small, careful lives. I'd worked hard to get here. Scholarships, late nights in grad school, years of underpaid junior roles before I figured out how to bill what I was worth. My parents ran a dry cleaning business in Sacramento. My whole childhood smelled like steam and chemicals. My mother used to tell me, "You study hard so you don't work with your hands like we do." I'd kept that promise. I had the apartment, the car, the contracts. I had a life that looked like success from every angle. I just had this other thing, too. This habit that had started small, back in my 20s, poker with college friends, fantasy leagues, a weekend trip to Vegas once a year. It had grown, the way these things do. Offshore sports books, live betting, middle of the night sessions when I couldn't sleep. I'd had a good year last year, up maybe 11,000 overall. This year was rougher. I was down, maybe 16 if I was honest about it, but I'd make it back. I always made it back eventually. The coffee had gone lukewarm. I finished it anyway, rinsed the mug, set it in the sink, sat back down at my desk, and opened my email. 3 recruiter messages, 1 LinkedIn connection request, a reminder about a webinar I'd never attend. I archived them all. The FanDuel tab was still open in the corner of my screen. The Blazers were down by 12 at halftime. I lost the 500 on the Blazers. Then I put 800 on the Warriors the next night because I needed to win it back, and the Warriors were at home against a team missing their best player. They lost by 6. I stared at my laptop screen in the dark apartment, the game recap scrolling past, and felt that old familiar tightness in my chest. Not panic exactly, just the sense that I'd made a mistake I could fix if I kept going. I won 1,400 2 nights later on a Celtics Sixers over. Finally, the relief was chemical, a brightness that spread through my whole body. I pulled the money out and promised myself I'd stop for the week. Then I put 1,000 on a Thursday night game and lost, and by Sunday, I was even again, which felt like losing. The Seattle contract paid out on schedule. 28,000 hit my account, and I paid rent, car, credit card minimums. I sent Diane 300 for Emma's cleats and birthday present. I still hadn't confirmed whether I was coming to Portland. Every time I opened her texts, I felt the weight of it, the lie I was about to tell, or the promise I'd break. I kept putting it off. On a Tuesday morning, my recruiter called about the follow-up contract I'd been counting on, the 6-month build for a healthcare startup in Bellevue. She sounded apologetic before she even said it. Jacob, I'm sorry. They went into Chapter 11 last week. The whole deal's dead. I sat there holding the phone, looking out at the skyline, trying to do the math in my head. I had enough in savings to cover 3 months of rent if I was careful. For if I stopped everything else. The car lease, the credit cards, utilities, food. I could find another contract in 3 months. I always did. Okay, I said. Thanks for letting me know. I'll keep looking. Something'll come up. I know. Appreciate it. I hung up and opened my calendar. Emma's birthday was in 4 days. I hadn't bought a present. Hadn't booked a train ticket. I looked at my bank account. 4,100 minus the 3,400 for rent that would auto-pay tomorrow. $700 until the next contract. Whenever that was. I called Diane. She answered on the 3rd ring. I can't make it Saturday, I said. Silence on the other end. I could hear Emma in the background, singing something. You're unbelievable, Diane said. I'm sick. I think it's the flu. You're not sick. I am. I feel like hell. You're a liar, Jacob. That's what you are. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling nothing and everything at the same time. I told myself I'd make it up to Emma. I'd visit in 2 weeks, take her somewhere nice. I'd do better. That Saturday, I drove to Reno. I told myself I needed a break, needed to clear my head. I checked into a cheap hotel off the main strip, the kind with cigarette burns in the carpet and a do not disturb sign that didn't stay on the handle. I wasn't planning to stay long. Just a few hours at the tables, maybe win enough to feel like the week hadn't been a total loss. I played blackjack at a table near the high-limit room. The dealer was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and hands that moved like they'd dealt a million cards. I started with 200, won 3 hands in a row, felt the old electricity. Kept playing. By midnight, I was up 900. I should have walked. I knew I should have walked. I didn't walk. I doubled down on 16 against the dealer 7. Lost. Did it again on the next hand. Lost. The stack of chips in front of me got smaller. Then disappeared. Then I was pulling cash from the ATM in the corner. Then I was back at the table. The dealer's face never changed. She just kept sliding cards across the felt, kept taking my money with the same patient efficiency. I left at 3 in the morning, down 2,100 overall. I sat in my car in the parking garage with the dome light on, looking at my bank statement on my phone. The ATM withdrawals stacked up like evidence. 400, 300, 600, 800. I drove home with the window cracked, cold air rushing in, trying to stay awake. I kept thinking about Emma's birthday, about the drawing she'd wanted to show me, About Diane's voice on the phone. You're a liar, Jacob. She wasn't wrong that I got back to Seattle at 7 in the morning, Sunday light breaking gray over the water. Parked in the garage under my building and sat there for 20 minutes, too tired to move. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. Hope you're having a good weekend, honey. Call when you get a chance. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat. I'd call her later. When I had something good to say? When I felt like a son she could be proud of instead of whatever I was becoming. The Bellevue interview happened on a Wednesday. I wore the gray suit I'd bought 2 years ago when I thought I'd need it more often. The one that still fit, but felt tighter now for reasons I didn't want to think about. The office was new construction, all glass and open floor plans. The kind of place that put beanbag chairs in the break room and called it culture. I met with 3 people, HR, the CTO, and a project lead who couldn't have been older than 28. They asked the usual questions. I gave the usual answers. Cloud migration strategy, security protocols, stakeholder management. I'd done this so many times I could run the script in my sleep. We'll have a decision by end of week, the CTO said, shaking my hand at the door. I nodded, smiled, said I looked forward to hearing from them. I meant it. I needed this. Not in the abstract future planning way I used to need contracts, but in the immediate rent is due in 8 days way that made my stomach tight, that I checked my bank account in the parking lot before I started the car. $1,950. Rent was $3,400. The first credit card payment I'd been deferring was due in 3 days, minimum of $160. The second card was maxed. My car lease payment had bounced last month, and I'd covered it late with a fee that made my jaw clench. I was juggling numbers that didn't add up no matter how I arranged them. I drove back to the apartment and opened my laptop. Checked email. Nothing from the recruiter. Nothing from Bellevue. I opened a spreadsheet I'd been avoiding, the one where I tracked income and expenses, and stared at the red cells until they stopped meaning anything. Then I opened my email again and saw the promo. Subject line, deposit $500, get $200 bonus, limited time. An offshore book I'd used before, one of the ones with a Curaçao license and customer service reps who barely spoke English. I clicked through. The offer was real. Deposit $500, they'd match $200, and I could use it all on whatever I wanted. $700 total to work with. I could turn $700 into rent money. I'd done it before. One good parlay, maybe a live bet on a game I actually watched and understood. I wouldn't chase. I'd be smart about it. I moved $500 from checking to the offshore account. Balance now, $1,450. I watched the deposit process, the spinning wheel on the screen, the confirmation message. Bonus credited. $700 in my account, ready to bet. There was an NBA slate that night. 6 games. I spent an hour reading injury reports, looking at trends, checking line movement. I built a 3-team parlay, Nuggets -7, Heat over 215, Mavericks money line. It felt solid. The kind of bet that hit more often than it missed if you knew what you were doing. I put $300 on it. The Nuggets covered by halftime. The Heat game went over in the third quarter. I watched the Mavericks-Spurs game on my laptop, volume low, the apartment dark except for the screen. Dallas was up 8 with 4 minutes left. I was going to win. I could feel it. 300 would turn into 960 after the parlay multiplier. Not rent, but close. Close enough to breathe. The Spurs went on a 10-0 run in the last 3 minutes. Dallas lost by 2. I stared at the final score until the screen went to a recap I didn't want to watch. I put the other $400 on a late West Coast game, Warriors -4. They lost by 6. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Balance. 0. Thursday morning I called Greg. We'd been roommates at UW, back when we both thought we were going to change the world with tech startups and big ideas. He'd ended up in product management at a mid-tier SaaS company. Decent money, stable life. The kind of boring success that looked better every year. Hey man, I said when he picked up. I need to ask you something. What's up? I need to borrow $5,000. Silence on the line. Not long, but long enough that I felt it. Is everything okay? He asked. Yeah, I have a medical thing. A procedure. Insurance doesn't cover all of it, and I'm between contracts right now. Another pause. I could hear him breathing, thinking. I can probably do 3,000, he said. That work? Yeah, that'd be huge. Thank you. I'll Venmo it Friday. You sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Just one of those things. I'll pay you back when the next contract clears. Don't worry about it. Just take care of yourself. We hung up. I sat on the couch staring at the wall, hating myself in a low-grade way I was getting used to. The lie had come out so smooth, so easy, like I'd been practicing it. Friday morning, the Venmo notification came through. $3,000. The note said, "Hope you're okay. Man, I paid rent. $2,800. I used the rest for groceries and the credit card minimum. I was good for another month. I just needed the Bellevue contract to come through. I just needed one thing to go right." Monday afternoon, I got the email. "Thank you for your interest. We've decided to move forward with another candidate." I read it 3 times. Closed the laptop. Opened it again and read it a 4th time like the words might change. They didn't change. I had 30 days until rent was due again. No contract. No leads. $3,000 I'd borrowed under false pretenses and already spent. I opened a job board and started scrolling, clicking on postings I didn't care about, filling out applications that felt like throwing stones into a dark well. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. "Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" I typed back. "All good. Just busy with a new contract. I'll call you this weekend." I didn't call her that weekend. I didn't call anyone. Late April bled into May, and I was still sending out resumes. 20, 30 a day. Cover letters I customized just enough to pass the screening software. I got 2 phone interviews that went nowhere. One recruiter asked where I was currently based, and I said, "Seattle area, flexible on location," which was true enough. She said she'd follow up. She didn't. The car payment bounced again. I got an email from the lease company, polite but firm. 3rd notice. I called them and explained I was between contracts. Payment would clear in a week. The rep said they'd note the account. Her voice said she'd heard this before. My mother called on a Tuesday evening. I almost didn't answer, but the guilt got heavier every time I let it go to voicemail. "Jacob, honey, I haven't heard your voice in weeks." "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. Work's been crazy. You sound tired." "Just busy." New contract ramping up. There was no new contract. There hadn't been a new contract in 2 months. "Are you eating enough? You always forget to eat when you're working too much." "I'm fine. Really. Let me send you some money. For groceries." The offer landed like a stone in my chest. She was 67, still working the dry cleaning shop 6 days a week because retirement was something other people did. She wanted to send me money. "No, Mom. I don't need it. I'm doing really well, actually. This contract's going to be a big one." "Okay. If you're sure." "I'm sure." We talked for another 5 minutes. She told me about a customer who'd brought in a wedding dress from 1974, about my father's back pain, about the new Thai restaurant down the street they'd tried. I made the right sounds, asked the right questions, felt the lie sitting in my throat the whole time. After we hung up, I sat on the couch in the dark apartment and did nothing for an hour. Memorial Day weekend came. I told myself I'd stay home, focus on applications, get my life back on track. By Saturday night, I was in my car driving south to Muckleshoot Casino with $600 in cash I'd pulled from the ATM. Last money in my checking account. I played blackjack. Won $300 in the first hour. Felt that bright, clean feeling, like maybe my luck was turning. Kept playing. By midnight, I was up $900 total. I should have left. I knew the math. I knew the odds. I kept playing anyway. I left at 3 in the morning with $40. I sat in the parking lot until the sun came up. Too ashamed to drive home, watching other cars leave with people who'd probably won or at least lost less than I had. The sky went from black to gray to pale blue. Birds started singing in the trees at the edge of the lot. I drove home in morning traffic. Everyone heading somewhere with purpose, and I felt like a ghost in my own life. June arrived with heat and clarity I didn't want. Rent was due in 6 days. I had $1,870 in the bank and $2,000 I could borrow if I asked the right person with the right lie. I called Marcus, a guy I'd worked with on a contract 3 years ago. We'd gotten drinks a few times, talked about side projects that never happened, kept in touch the way professionals do. "Hey man," I said when he answered. "I need to ask a favor." "Sure, what's up?" "I'm in a weird spot. Between contracts, and there's a gap before the next payment clears. Could you spot me $2,000 for a couple weeks?" "Yeah, I can do that. When do you need it?" "Soon as possible. I'll sell it today. You good otherwise?" "Yeah, just cash flow stuff. You know how it is." "For sure. I'll send it in an hour." The money came through at 2:15. I paid rent. Used $300 for groceries. Paid the minimums on both credit cards. I had 800 left in 30 days to figure out what came next. I got a second round interview for a contract in Tacoma. Cloud security audit for months. Good rate. The interview went well. They asked smart questions. I gave smart answers. At the end, the hiring manager said they'd have a decision in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I couldn't wait 2 weeks. I opened a credit card offer that had been sitting in my email. Balance transfer, 0% for 12 months. I applied. Got approved for $8,500. I moved $4,000 from my 2 maxed cards to the new one. Paid the minimums on everything. Paid the car lease company. I had $700 in checking and 25 days until rent. My phone was full of texts I wasn't answering. Emma had sent 3 messages I'd read, but not replied to. Diane had sent one. She asks about you every day. Greg had sent. Hope the procedure went okay. My mother had sent. Miss you, honey. Call when you can. I put the phone face down and opened an offshore betting site. They had a promo running. Deposit match, 50% up to $1,000. The NBA finals were starting. Game 3 was that night. I knew basketball. I'd been watching it my whole life. This wasn't random. This was informed betting. I put 800 on the Warriors -3. They lost by 7. I put the last 400 on Game 4. Celtics +6. They lost by 9. I closed the laptop and lay on the couch in the dark, listening to traffic outside, feeling the walls of my life closing in. Mid-June, I got the email from Tacoma. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. I read it sitting at a coffee shop, the last $3 on my Starbucks card buying me a drip coffee, and 2 hours of Y-Fi. Bank account had $340. Rent was due in 12 days. I'd borrowed from 2 friends under false stories. I'd maxed 3 credit cards. I had no contract, no leads that felt real, no plan except to keep pretending everything was fine. I stopped answering my phone completely. Greg called twice. I let it ring. My mother called. I let it ring. Diane called and left a voicemail I didn't listen to. Emma sent a text with a photo of a drawing. I looked at it for 30 seconds and closed the message. Tuesday morning, I walked out of my apartment to get coffee and saw the notice taped to my door. White paper, official letterhead, words I'd been expecting but somehow hadn't believed would actually come. Notice to you, pay rent or quit. Assistant. Days to pay $6,800. Current rent plus late fees and the missed portion from last month I'd shorted, or vacate. I stood in the hallway staring at the paper. A neighbor walked past, glanced at me, kept going. I pulled the notice off the door and went back inside. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and read it 3 more times. The language was polite but absolute. 10 days. Then eviction proceedings. I opened my laptop and searched, how long can you live in your car? The results were a mix of advice forums and news articles about the homelessness crisis. I clicked through them anyway, reading about Walmart parking lots and gym memberships, and where to park without getting hassled by police. I wasn't homeless. I had 10 days. I could figure something out in 10 days, except I couldn't. I knew I couldn't. There was no contract coming. No friend I hadn't already lied to. No family I could face with the truth that I had a car. It was leased and I was behind on payments, but it was mine for now. I had a laptop. I had clothes. I could make this work temporarily, just until something came through. Just until my luck changed. I started packing that afternoon. 2 duffel bags of clothes, toiletries, laptop and charger, a box of documents I thought I might need, old contracts, tax returns, resume drafts. Everything else, the furniture, the dishes, the framed photos I'd stopped looking at, I left. 10 days. I'd be out in 3. Late June, I moved into my car. Not officially, not in any way I admitted to myself, but that's what it was. I parked in a Walmart lot in Renton, back corner where the RVs and semis parked overnight. First night, I didn't sleep. Just sat in the driver's seat with the overhead light on, refreshing my email, checking job boards, telling myself this was temporary. Morning came gray and early. I drove to a Starbucks and bought coffee with my debit card. $4.85. Balance, $67. I used their bathroom to brush my teeth and wash my face in the sink. Looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I almost didn't recognize. Thinner, older, tired in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. I still had my gym membership. $29.99 a month on autopay. I drove there at noon and showered, standing under the hot water longer than I needed to, using the cheap soap from the dispenser. Got dressed in the locker room like I belonged there. Sat in the lobby and sent out 6 resumes. each one with a professional email signature that listed the apartment address I didn't live at anymore. By evening, I was back at the Walmart lot. I watched cars come and go, wondered how many other people were doing the same thing. Sleeping in vehicles, pretending they were just passing through. I wasn't homeless. I was between places. That's what I told myself. Between the apartment and whatever came next. This was just a gap, a rough patch, a temporary situation that would resolve as soon as I landed a contract. Day 3, my phone battery died at 11 in the morning. I'd been sending emails from a library, hadn't thought about charging it. I sat there with a dead phone and realized I had no way to take calls from recruiters, no way to do phone screens, no way to prove I was reachable and reliable and ready to work. I drove back to the gym and plugged it in at the front desk while I pretended to work out. The kid at the counter didn't care. 45 minutes later, I had enough charge to last the day. That night, I parked under a streetlight, told myself I'd feel safer with light. Couldn't sleep anyway. Every sound made me jump. Every car door. Every voice. By Thursday, I had a phone screen scheduled. Cloud infrastructure role in Redmond, 6-month contract, good rate. The kind of job I used to land without trying. I prepped like my life depended on it, because it did. Wednesday night before the interview, I moved my car to a better lot, closer to downtown, well-lit and busy. Parked near the front where I could see it from the Starbucks across the street. I'd shower in the morning at the gym, put on my one clean button down. Take the call from the library at 2 p.m. Thursday morning. I was inside the Starbucks working through my notes when I glanced out the window and saw the tow truck. Didn't register at first what it was doing. Then I saw the driver hooking chains to the front of my Audi, and everything went sharp and cold. I ran outside. Too late. The car was already lifted, rear wheels off the ground. Hey, wait, that's my car. The driver looked at me, looked at his clipboard. You Jacob Winslow? Yeah. 3 missed payments. Repo order came through last week. I was going to pay it. I have the money coming. He didn't look convinced. Didn't look like he cared either way. You can call the lease company. They'll tell you what you need to pay to get it back. Everything I own is in that trunk. Should have made your payments. He finished hooking the chains and got in the truck. I stood there watching him drive away with my car, with my extra clothes and my monitor and my box of documents. Everything that didn't fit in the laptop bag on my shoulder. I walked back inside the Starbucks. Sat down at my table. The interview was in 4 hours. I opened my notes and tried to focus at 2 p.m. I took the call from a hard chair in the downtown library. I tried to sound confident and stable and like someone you trust with a 6-month contract. The woman on the other end asked about my availability, my rate, my experience with AWS migrations. I answered every question. Hit every point. Sounded professional, I thought. Sounded fine. She said they'd be in touch by end of week. They didn't call back. Friday evening, I stood in the library parking lot with my laptop bag and the clothes on my back and nowhere to go. No car. No apartment. $62 in my checking account. I walked to Pike Place Market and sat on a bench until a security guard told me I couldn't stay there. Walked to the waterfront. Sat on another bench. Fell asleep for maybe 20 minutes and woke up to someone shouting nearby. Wasn't shouting at me, but it didn't matter. I was awake and cold, and it was only 11 p.m. I walked until I found an awning outside a closed Vietnamese restaurant. Sat with my back against the wall, laptop bag between my feet, and waited for morning. It started raining just after midnight. I didn't sleep. Every time I started to drift, I'd hear footsteps or voices or the hiss of tires on wet pavement, and I'd snap awake with my heart hammering. A guy walked past around 2 a.m., glanced at me, kept going. I kept my hand on the laptop bag the whole time. Rain stopped around 4. I got up, everything stiff and aching, and walked to a gas station that was open all night. Bought a small coffee with 2 singles from my wallet. Sat on the curb outside drinking it. Watching the sky go from black to gray. By 7, I was at the public library waiting for it to open. First one in line. When the doors unlocked, I went straight to the bathroom and washed my face in the sink. Tried to make myself look less like someone who'd spent the night outside. A librarian walked in, saw me at the sink, didn't say anything. Just washed her hands and left. I found a table near an outlet and plugged in my laptop and phone. Checked my bank account. $62. Checked my email. Nothing from the Redmond interview. Nothing from any of the 20 applications I'd sent this week. I opened a new browser tab and started applying for more jobs. Wrote cover letters that mentioned my current consulting engagements and my flexible availability. Put the apartment address I didn't live at anymore. My phone buzzed. Email notification. I opened it. Message from my gym. Payment declined. Membership suspended pending updated payment information. In more showers. I sat there staring at the screen. No car, no apartment, no gym access. $62 and a laptop and no clear path forward. My mother called. I watched her name on the screen until it went to voicemail. She called again 10 minutes later. I answered this time because ignoring her twice felt worse. Jacob, I've been worried. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy. You don't sound fine. I'm tired. Work's been intense. Are you eating? Yes. Are you sure you don't need money? The offer sat in my throat like a stone. She was 67 and working 6 days a week and wanted to send me money because she thought I was tired from work. I don't need money. I'm doing really well. New contract just started, actually. Okay, honey. Call me this weekend. I will. I hung up. Sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of the lie. The distance between who she thought I was and who I actually was. That night, I tried the same bench near Pike Place. Someone was already there, asleep or passed out. I couldn't tell. I walked until I found another spot, an alcove outside a closed bookstore. Sat down with my back against the door. No rain this time, but cold. I pulled my jacket tighter and closed my eyes. Didn't sleep. A guy in line at the library bathroom told me about the shelter. 4th and Cherry, he said. Intake at 5 p.m., first come beds. I didn't want to go. Going meant admitting something I wasn't ready to admit, but I'd been awake for 2 nights and my whole body ached and I needed to lie down. Somewhere that wasn't concrete. I walked to the address around 4:30. There was already a line. 19 men, I counted. Some looked like they'd been on the street for years. Some looked like me. 2 clean clothes, recent haircuts, the kind of loss that hadn't fully set in yet. The wait was 2 hours. I stood there the whole time thinking someone would recognize me, realize I didn't belong, turn me away. No one did. At the intake window, a woman named Denise asked for my ID. Asked if I had any outstanding warrants. Asked about drugs or alcohol. I said no to everything. She handed me a slip of paper with a room assignment. Room C, cot 34. Dinner's at 6. Lights out at 10. Everyone's out by 8 a.m. Thank you. She nodded. Already looking at the next person in line. I followed signs down a hallway that smelled like bleach and sweat and something sour I couldn't place. Room C was huge, full of narrow cots and tight rows. 60 men, Denise had said. 60 people sleeping 10 feet from each other with no privacy, no quiet, no space. Cot 34 was near the back. Thin mattress on a metal frame, 1 pillow, 1 blanket. I set my laptop bag down and sat on the edge. The man on the cot next to mine glanced over, didn't say anything. Dinner was in a cafeteria-style room. Oatmeal, coffee, a bruised apple. I ate everything. Hadn't eaten since the gas station coffee that morning. Back in room C, the lights went out at 10. I lay on the cot with my laptop bag on my chest, listening to 60 people breathe and cough and shift and murmur. Someone was crying 2 rows over, quiet but steady. Someone else was snoring. The smell was worse in the dark. I didn't sleep. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the apartment I used to have, the bed I used to sleep in, the life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. Somewhere near dawn, I closed my eyes for maybe an hour. Breakfast was at 7. Oatmeal again. More coffee. I ate fast, grateful for anything. At 8 a.m., everyone had to leave. 12 hours to fill with nowhere to go. I walked out into the morning light, laptop bag over my shoulder, and started looking for a place to sit. Late July into August. Days blurred into a pattern. I stopped fighting. Shelter at night when I got to bed. Sometimes it was full, and I slept wherever I could find. Streets during the day. Libraries, coffee shops, anywhere with outlets and Wi-Fi and bathrooms I could use without someone watching. I was still applying for jobs, but fewer now. Harder to sound confident when you're calling from a phone at 4% battery, when you haven't showered in 3 days. When the last meal you ate was oatmeal from a shelter cafeteria. A recruiter called about a contract in Bellevue. I took the call sitting on a bench outside the library. Where are you currently based? She asked. Seattle area. Staying with family temporarily. Great. And you're available to start immediately? Yes. Perfect. I'll follow up early next week. She didn't follow up. I had a second-round Zoom interview scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. I forgot about the shelter's noon bag check policy, showed up at 1:30 to get my laptop. They wouldn't give it to me until 6 p.m. I missed the interview. Sent an apology email. Got an automated reply. My LinkedIn profile views dropped from 8 a week to 2 to 0. I sent messages to old contacts, people I'd worked with, people who'd said, "Let's grab coffee sometime." Most didn't reply. The ones who did gave vague encouragement and no leads. People stop responding when you stop being useful. My mother called in early August. I answered because ignoring her felt worse than lying. "Jacob, are you okay? You sound different." "I'm fine. Just tired." "Are you eating enough?" "Yes, Mom." "Let me send you some money." "I don't need it. New contract starting next week, actually. Big one." "Okay, honey. Promise you'll call if you need anything." "I promise." After we hung up, I sat on the curb outside the shelter and cried. Not the kind of crying you can control or stop. The kind that comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere I'd been avoiding for months. That a woman walked past and put $1 in my hand. She thought I was panhandling. I looked at the dollar for a long time. Then I folded it and put it in my pocket. By the end of the week, my phone service was suspended for non-payment. $11 left in checking. No way to receive calls. No way to prove I was reachable. The distance between me and any kind of normal job had become impossible to cross. Early August, my phone was dead weight. No service, just a screen that worked on Wi-Fi. I kept it charged out of habit, out of some belief that I'd need it again someday. My laptop was the last piece of the old life. The tool that made me a consultant, the machine I'd bought 3 years ago for $1,800. I carried it everywhere, kept it in my sight, slept with the bag on my chest. I walked it to a pawn shop on Rainier Avenue on a Tuesday morning. The guy behind the counter looked at it for 30 seconds. $120. "It's worth more than that." He shrugged. "That's what I can do." I needed the money. I took the $120. I used $80 for a week at a pay-by-the-week motel near the airport. The room smelled like mildew and cigarettes. Cockroaches in the bathroom. Lock that didn't work. But it was a bed and a door, and for 7 days I could pretend I had a home. I bought food. Charged my phone at a McDonald's, even though it had no service. On Wi-Fi I could still read messages, still see the life I used to have. Emma had sent a text 3 days ago. I opened it now. Photo of her in a soccer uniform. Caption, "Made JV. Miss you." I stared at the photo for 40 minutes. She looked happy, proud, older than I remembered. I wanted to reply. Wanted to tell her I was proud of her, that I loved her, that I was sorry for disappearing. But what would I say? That her father, who used to buy her expensive art supplies and take her to baseball games, was living in shelters and couldn't even keep a phone plan? That I'd gambled away everything and lied to everyone and couldn't face her with the truth? I closed the message. The motel week ended on a Tuesday. I packed my stuff, one backpack now, everything I owned, and walked back toward downtown. Back to the shelters, back to the waiting, back to the pattern. Except now I had no laptop, no resume to send, no way to apply for jobs that required applications, no path back to the life I'd lost. That I had a phone that worked on Wi-Fi and a daughter I couldn't answer. That was it. Late August, I found an app called GigSmart. Day labor, cash gigs, the kind of work I used to think was beneath me. I downloaded it at the library and scrolled through listings. Moving furniture, cleaning storage units, standing in line for people who didn't want to wait. First job was in Ballard. Moving furniture for a couple, 4 hours, $50 cash. The husband watched me like I might steal something. Never made eye contact, just pointed at boxes and said, "That one goes upstairs." I lifted everything they told me to lift. Got my $50 and left. Second gig was Georgetown. 6 hours in 90-degree heat cleaning out a storage unit full of junk someone's grandmother had left behind. $65. My back ached for 2 days after. Third was standing in line outside a sneaker store for a teenager who wanted limited-release Nikes but didn't want to wait. 5 hours, $40. I stood there with 30 other people doing the same thing. All of us trading our time for money someone else didn't want to spend. $11 an hour on average. Enough to eat, not enough to rent a room. Not enough to get back. I learned the food bank schedule. St. James on Mondays, Blessed Sacrament on Wednesdays, the Lutheran Church on Fridays. I ate everything they gave me. Stopped being picky about what was fresh or what tasted good. Food was food. I stopped shaving because I had no razor, no mirror, no reason to keep up appearances. Stopped checking my old email because the life in that inbox was over. Stopped thinking about contracts and LinkedIn and the career I used to have. Early September, Emma sent another text. Dad, where are you? I read it on Wi-Fi at the library. Typed 6 different replies and deleted them all. I'm fine, sweetie, just busy with work. Lied. I'm sorry, I'm going through a hard time. Too vague. I'm homeless because I gambled everything away. True. Impossible. I didn't send anything. Diane sent a follow-up text 2 days later. If you don't reply to your daughter in 48 hours, I'm blocking your number. She deserves better. I stared at the message. Knew she was right. Knew Emma deserved better than a father who disappeared without explanation. Knew I should tell her something, anything. Even if it was hard. I didn't reply. I told myself I'd reach out when I was back on my feet. When I had good news to share. When I could be the dad she remembered instead of whatever I'd become. I knew I was lying to myself. A week later I checked, and my number was blocked. No more messages from Emma. No more updates about soccer or school or drawings she wanted to show me. Just silence. I'd lost my daughter through my own inaction. Not because of something that happened to me, but because of what I failed to do. That night, I didn't go to the shelter. Walked to the waterfront instead and sat on the pier until 4 in the morning, watching ferries cross the black water. Lights from the city reflecting on the surface, everything shimmering and distant. I thought about Emma at 11 years old, asking where her dad went. I thought about Diane explaining that I wasn't coming back, that I'd made my choice. I thought about the version of me that used to exist, the one who showed up, who kept promises, who didn't let people down. That person was gone. I'd killed him one bed at a time. The sky started to lighten. I got up and walked back toward the city. Didn't remember deciding to leave the pier, didn't remember the walk itself. I woke up under the viaduct with no memory of getting there. That scared me more than anything else had. October brought rain. Real Seattle rain, the kind that doesn't stop, that soaks through everything and stays. The shelter filled up fast every night. There were nights I didn't get a bed, nights I stayed wherever I could find cover. One night under an overpass with a garbage bag pulled over my shoulders, rain drumming on the concrete above. Another night behind a dumpster near the bus station, tucked against the wall where the overhang kept most of the water off. I developed a cough that wouldn't stop. Started in my chest, dry and painful, then turned wet. Then came the fever. I ignored it for 5 days. Kept walking, kept looking for gigs, kept pretending I was fine. But the fever got worse and my chest hurt. When I breathed and I knew something was wrong. Day 5 I walked into Harborview ER. Waited. 6 hours in a plastic chair with other people who looked like me, no insurance, no options, nowhere else to go. Finally saw a doctor who listened to my lungs and wrote something on a chart. Pneumonia, she said. You need antibiotics. She wrote a prescription and handed me a discharge sheet with a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks. I had no money for the prescription. A social worker came by before I left. Helped me fill it through some assistance program I didn't understand. I got the pills. Started taking them that night. The fever broke after 3 days. The cough lasted another month. I never made the follow-up appointment. Winter was coming and I was still on the street. Late October. I was walking near Westlake Center when I saw Aaron. Recognized him from 20 feet away. Same North Face jacket, same confident walk. We'd worked together on a contract in 2019, used to get drinks after meetings, once spent a whole night in a Portland hotel bar complaining about project managers. He saw me. I watched his face change when he registered who I was. Shock, then pity, then something that looked like fear. He stopped. Jacob? Jesus, man, are you okay? I was wearing pants I'd worn for 3 weeks. A jacket someone left at the shelter. Boots that didn't fit right. Hadn't showered in 5 days. I could see myself through his eyes, a ghost of who I used to be. Yeah, I'm good. Just between things. You look. He trailed off. Didn't finish the sentence. I'm fine. Really. You should call me if you need anything. He didn't offer his number. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't ask if I needed help right now, standing in front of him looking like this. Sure. Thanks. He walked away after 30 seconds. I stood there watching him disappear into the crowd. I'd become the kind of person people didn't want to see. The kind they looked past or looked away from. Proof that things could go wrong. That the distance between their life and mine wasn't as far as they wanted to believe. That night at the shelter, someone stole my boots while I was asleep. Woke up and they were gone. Had to walk around in socks for 2 days until I found a pair at a donation center that mostly fit. Lost the boots. Lost Aaron. Lost any illusion that my old life was recoverable. Early November, I sat on a milk crate outside a 7-Eleven in the International District, drinking coffee someone had left on a bench. Cold, tasted like cigarettes, but it was warm and free. My mind drifted. I wasn't trying to remember, but the memory came anyway. Reno, 18 months ago. The night that started everything. I'd been up 4,000 at one point, playing blackjack near the high-limit room. Felt invincible. The dealer was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and quick hands that I remember thinking, this is my rent money. And then immediately thinking, but I can make it back. I doubled down on 16 against the dealers. 7. Lost. Did it again. Lost. Kept. Going until the 4,000 was gone and I was down. 2,100 overall. Sat at that table until 3 in the morning. Chasing something that never came. I can still see the cards sliding across green felt. The dealer's blank expression. The other players who came and went while I stayed, locked in, convinced the next hand would turn it around. I wonder if she remembers me. Probably not. She probably sees men like me every night. Men who think they're different, who think they can beat the math, who can't walk away even when they know they should. I finished the coffee. Threw the cup away. Started walking toward the shelter, hoping there'd be a bed tonight. Got there at 5:40. Line was already 30 people deep. Stood there in the cold, waiting to see if I'd sleep inside or out. This was my life now. This was what all those bets had bought me. Mid-November, present day. I didn't get a bed that night. Shelter was full by the time I reached the intake window. Denise looked at me with the same tired expression she always had, said, sorry, we're at capacity, and I walked back out into the cold. My phone had been dead for 3 months. Service disconnected, just a brick in my pocket I kept forgetting to throw away. No laptop. No car. No address. My bank account was closed for inactivity and overdrafts. I had $3 in cash and a day labor gig tomorrow morning if I showed up at 6 a.m. near the Home Depot in Soto. I walked to the underpass where I'd slept before. Found my usual spot behind a concrete pillar. Pulled a donated sleeping bag up to my chin. Smelled like mildew, but it was warm enough at 7:30 p.m. and I wasn't tired, but there was nothing else to do. Nowhere to go, no one to call. No purpose except to make it through the night and wake up tomorrow and try again. I thought about Emma in Portland. Wondered if she still asked about me or if Diane had told her I was gone for good. Thought about my parents working the dry cleaning shop, still not knowing what happened to their son. Thought about the man I used to be, the one with the apartment and the Audi and the contracts and the future. That person believed he was immune to this. That person was wrong. I watched headlights blur past on the viaduct above. Rain starting again. Light at first, then heavier. People in warm cars with the radio on, going home to places that were theirs, to lives that made sense. I wondered if they saw me at all, or if I'd already become invisible. The kind of person they'd learn not to look at. I pulled the sleeping bag tighter. Rain picked up. I closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. November dragged into weeks. I stopped counting. Days were all the same. Wake up cold, find somewhere to sit during daylight hours, hope for a shelter bed at night. The city had a rhythm I'd learned without meaning to. Which library opened earliest? Which coffee shop let you sit longest without buying anything? Which alley stayed dry when it rained? I picked up gigs when I could. GigSmart had other apps like it. TaskRabbit, Wanalo, a dozen platforms where people with houses paid people without them to do things they didn't want to do. Move boxes, clean gutters, stand in line. I made enough to eat most days. Not enough for anything else. The shelters had rules I was still learning. Some had curfews. Some had bag checks. Some didn't allow you back if you missed too many nights. The beds were first come, and on cold nights the line started forming at 3 in the afternoon. I'd stand there for hours, shifting my weight from foot to foot, watching the intake worker cross names off a list, and knowing that some nights my name wouldn't make the cut. There was a meal program at a church on Pine Street. Hot lunch every Tuesday and Thursday, served in a basement that smelled like boiled vegetables and floor cleaner. You had to sit through a 15-minute sermon first, someone talking about Jesus and redemption and how we were all God's children. I sat in the back and stared at the floor until it was over. Then I ate everything they put in front of me. I met other people. Not friends, exactly, but people whose faces I recognized, whose patterns overlapped with mine. There was a guy named Dennis who'd been on the street for 3 years, used to work construction until his back gave out. He knew which dumpsters behind which restaurants had the best food, which cops would hassle you, and which ones would just tell you to move along. There was a woman named Sharon who kept everything she owned in a shopping cart covered with a tarp. She talked to herself sometimes, full conversations with people who weren't there. Other times she was sharp and present, telling stories about the daughter she hadn't seen in 8 years. There was a younger guy, maybe 25, who never told anyone his name. He'd showed up a few weeks ago with a backpack and a 1,000-yard stare. Veteran, probably. He didn't talk much. Just stood in the shelter lines and ate at the meal programs and disappeared during the day that we didn't ask each other how we got here. That was an unspoken rule. Everyone had a story, and most of them were some combination of bad luck and bad choices and systems that didn't catch you when you fell. Didn't matter. We were all here now. I tried to keep applying for jobs, but it got harder without a laptop, without an address, without any way to present myself as someone employable. I'd go to the library and use the public computers, but there was a 2-hour limit and a waiting list, and I could only do so much in that time. I'd pull up job boards and see postings that required a phone number, a permanent address, references from recent employers. I had none of those things. There were social services, agencies that were supposed to help. I went to a few, filled out forms, talked to caseworkers who seemed tired before the conversation even started. They asked about my work history, my education, my barriers to employment. I told them I had a master's degree in information systems, 10 years of consulting experience, no criminal record, no substance abuse issues. They nodded and took notes and said they'd be in touch. No one was ever in touch. The barriers weren't the ones they were looking for. The barriers were invisible. No phone, no laptop, no clean clothes for an interview, no address to put on an application. No way to explain the gap in my resume without revealing that I'd spent the last 6 months living in shelters and under bridges. One caseworker suggested I look into job training programs. Data entry, call center work. I nodded and thanked her. I had a master's degree. I'd built cloud infrastructure for companies with million-dollar budgets. Now someone was suggesting I learn data entry, but maybe that's where I was now. Maybe that was the level I'd fallen to. I thought about my parents sometimes. Wondered if they'd tried calling, if they'd noticed I'd stopped responding. My mother's number was stored in a phone that didn't work anymore. Even if I could call, I didn't know what I'd say. I thought about Emma more than I wanted to. Wondered what Diane had told her, how she'd explained why her dad had disappeared. Maybe she said I'd moved away for work. Maybe she told the truth, that I'd chosen gambling over everything, that I'd lied and hidden and vanished when things got hard. Either way, Emma was growing up without me. She'd made the JV soccer team, and I hadn't congratulated her. She'd had a birthday I didn't acknowledge. Every day I didn't reach out was another day I proved I wasn't the father she deserved. The guilt sat in my chest like a stone, but guilt didn't change anything. Guilt didn't get me a phone or a job or a way back into her life. That mid-November, I got sick again. Not pneumonia this time, just a cold that wouldn't quit. Runny nose, sore throat, headache that made my skull feel too small. I didn't go to the ER. Didn't seem worth the 6-hour wait for someone to tell me to rest and drink fluids when I had nowhere to rest and no money for anything except the cheapest food I could find. That I just kept moving, kept standing in lines, kept looking for gigs, kept surviving in the narrowest possible sense of the word. One night, I got a bed at the shelter, and the guy on the cot next to mine asked if I had any family. I said yes. He asked if they knew where I was. I said no. You should tell them, he said. Before it's too late. Too late for what? He shrugged. Before you get so far gone you can't come back. I didn't answer. Didn't know if I was already that far gone, or if there was still some path back that I couldn't see yet. That night, I lay awake in the dark listening to 60 men breathe and snore and shift on their cots. Thought about all the small decisions that had brought me here. The first bet that seemed harmless. The first lie that seemed necessary. The first time I chose the casino over my daughter. Each decision had felt manageable at the time, like something I could control or undo later. But they'd stacked up, one on top of another, until the weight was too much to carry and everything collapsed. People talk about rock bottom like it's a single moment, a dramatic crash that wakes you up and forces you to change. But my bottom wasn't like that. It was gradual. It was lying on a cot in a room full of strangers, owning nothing, connected to no one. With no clear path forward and no energy left to find one. It was waking up every morning and realizing that this was my life now. And maybe it would be my life forever. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold or the exhaustion. The worst part was the invisibility. Walking through a city full of people who looked right through you, who'd trained themselves not to see you because seeing you meant acknowledging that this could happen to anyone. That the distance between their life and yours was smaller than they wanted to believe, that I'd become the person I used to avoid making eye contact with. Late November. A caseworker named Maria told me about a program. Transitional housing, she called it. 6 months in a shared apartment with 3 other men, case management, job placement support. There was a waiting list, but she thought I'd be a good candidate. You have education, work history, no major barriers, she said. You're exactly the kind of person these programs are designed for. I filled out the application sitting in her office, a tiny room with cinder block walls and a space heater that rattled. She asked questions and typed my answers into a database that looked like it was built in 1995. How long is the waiting list? I asked. Hard to say. Could be 2 months, could be 6. Depends on openings. 2 months. I'd been homeless for 5 already. What was 2 more? She printed out a sheet with phone numbers and addresses, other resources I could access while I waited. Food banks I already knew about. Shelters I already went to. A clinic that offered free medical care on Wednesday mornings. Call me if anything changes, she said. If you get housing on your own, if you find work, anything. I thanked her, folded the paper, and put it in my pocket. Walked out into the gray November afternoon with no more hope than I'd walked in with. The truth was I didn't believe the program would help. Didn't believe I'd get accepted. Didn't believe 6 months in transitional housing would erase the gap in my resume or explain to future employers why I'd disappeared from the workforce. Didn't believe any of it would bring back the person I used to be. But I went through the motions because what else was there to do? December came. The rain turned colder, meaner. Some nights it sleet, ice mixing with the rain and soaking through every layer I wore. The shelter filled up every night now. Winter always brought more people in from the streets. People who could tough it out in summer but couldn't survive the cold that I didn't get beds 3 nights in a row. Spent 1 night under the viaduct, 1 behind a grocery store loading dock, 1 in a bus shelter until a cop told me to move. Each morning I woke up, if I'd slept at all, feeling older, more worn down, less like a person who could ever climb back out of this. Christmas was coming. I could see it in the stores, in the lights people hung, in the Salvation Army bell ringers on every corner. Family shopping, buying gifts, making plans. Emma would be opening presents in Portland. My parents would be having dinner at the house. Probably wondering why I hadn't called, that I felt further from all of it than I'd ever felt from anything. One afternoon, I was sitting outside the library when a man stopped in front of me. Middle-aged, clean jacket, the kind of person who clearly had somewhere to be. Here, he said, holding out a $20 bill. I looked at it. Looked at him. I don't need money, I said. Just take it. Merry Christmas. I'm not. I stopped. Wasn't sure how to finish the sentence. I'm not homeless. I was. I'm not begging. I wasn't. But I looked like someone who might be. He set the 20 on the bench next to me and walked away before I could say anything else. I stared at the bill for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw it away, prove I wasn't what he thought I was. Part of me, the practical part, the part that had learned to survive, picked it up and put it in my pocket. $20. Enough for 2 meals and maybe a pair of dry socks. I used it for food. That night at the shelter, I ran into Dennis again. He was sitting on his cot pulling off wet boots, muttering about the cold. You hear about the sweep? He asked. What sweep? Downtown. They're clearing out the encampments, moving everyone along. Means the shelters are going to be even more packed. I nodded. I'd seen the encampments. Tents under overpasses, clusters of tarps and shopping carts in alleys. People who decided the shelters weren't worth the rules and the waiting and the indignity. I'd thought about joining them more than once, but something had stopped me. Some last shred of belief that I was different, that I was temporary, that I'd find a way out. Where do they go? I asked. The people from the camps? Dennis shrugged. Somewhere else. Anywhere else. Just not there. That was the thing about homelessness. You were always being told to move. Not here. Not now. Somewhere else. Anywhere but where you were. Maria called me 2 days before Christmas. I was at the library using Wi-Fi when I saw the voicemail notification. Had to borrow someone's phone to call her back. Good news, she said. You're at the top of the list. There's an opening in the transitional housing program. You can move in January 2nd if you want it. I stood there holding the phone, Not sure what I felt. Relief, maybe. Or just exhaustion. Yeah, I said. I want it. Great. I'll send you the details. You'll need to meet with your case manager on the 1st, go through intake, sign some paperwork. Okay, Jacob, this is a good thing. This is your chance to get back on your feet. I know. Thank you. I hung up and gave the phone back. Sat down at the library table and stared at nothing. A chance to get back on my feet. That's what she'd said. But my feet had been gone for a long time. I wasn't sure I remembered how to stand on them anymore. January 2nd came cold and bright. I met Maria at an office building in the university district, signed papers I barely read, listened to a case manager named Derek explain the rules. No drugs, no alcohol on the premises, nightly curfew at 10 p.m., mandatory job search activities, weekly check-ins. I nodded at everything. The apartment was in Northgate, a 20-minute bus ride from downtown. Second floor of a building that had seen better decades. Derek unlocked the door and showed me inside. 3 other guys already lived there. Kevin, mid-40s, working part-time at a warehouse. Marcus, early 30s, doing temp work through an agency. And James, older, maybe 60, who'd been in the program for 4 months and had a night shift at a hotel starting next week. My room was small. A twin bed, a dresser, a desk with a wobbly chair. A window that looked out at the parking lot. It was the nicest room I'd had in 6 months. You good? Derek asked. Yeah, thank you. There's a house meeting tonight at 7. Don't miss it. He left. I sat on the bed and looked around. For walls, a door that locked, a space that was mine. Not permanently, just for 6 months, and only if I followed the rules. Only if I proved I was worth the investment. But it was something. I lay back on the bed. The mattress was thin but better than a shelter cot. The room was quiet. No one coughing 2 rows over. No one snoring. No one crying. Just quiet. I closed my eyes. Thought about Emma. About whether I should try to reach out now that I had an address. Now that I could maybe claim I was getting my life together. But 6 months in transitional housing wasn't together. It was barely hanging on. And she'd been without me for months now. Maybe she was better off that way. I thought about my parents. Thought about calling them. Telling them where I'd been, what had happened. But shame was a heavy thing, and the longer I waited, the heavier it got. I thought about the apartment I used to have, the car I used to drive, the contracts I used to sign. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Someone I used to know, but couldn't quite remember how to be. The program had job placement support. They'd help me find work, help me rebuild. Data entry, maybe. Call center. Something to get me back in the system, back among the employed, back to resembling a functioning adult. But the gap was still there. The months unaccounted for. The lie I'd have to tell, or the truth I'd have to admit. And underneath it all, the reason I'd lost everything in the first place. The gambling, the chasing, the belief that the next bet would fix everything. I hadn't placed a bet in 6 months. Not because I'd gotten help or gone to meetings or found some inner strength. Just because I had no money and no access and no way to feed the habit even if I wanted to. But the want was still there. Quieter now, buried under layers of exhaustion and survival, but there. I could feel it sometimes, a pull towards something I couldn't have, something that had destroyed me and that I missed anyway. That night at the house meeting, Derek talked about goals and accountability and the importance of community. The 4 of us sat around a table in the kitchen and nodded along. Kevin talked about picking up more shifts at the warehouse. Marcus talked about an interview he had next week. James talked about saving money for a deposit on his own place once the 6 months were up. When it was my turn, I said I was going to focus on finding work, rebuilding my resume, getting back on track. What kind of work? Derek asked. Tech consulting. That's what I used to do. He nodded, but I could see the skepticism. Everyone in this room knew what the gaps meant, what the homelessness meant. We all knew how hard it was to go backward, to reclaim something you'd lost. After the meeting, I went back to my room. Sat at the desk, opened the single drawer, and found a notepad and a pen someone had left behind. I pulled out a sheet of paper and started writing. Dear Emma, I stopped. Didn't know what came next. Didn't know how to explain where I'd been or why I'd disappeared or what kind of father lets 6 months pass without a word. I sat there for 20 minutes, pen hovering over paper, trying to find the words. Finally, I folded the blank page and put it back in the drawer. I'd write to her when I had something worth saying. When I had a job, an address I could keep, proof that I wasn't going to disappear again. I'd write to her when I was someone she could be proud of again. I laid down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The room was warm. The bed was soft. I had a roof and a door and 6 months to figure out what came next. Outside, the city hummed, with people going places, doing things, living lives that made sense. I was inside now, but I didn't feel like I belonged to that world yet. Maybe I never would again, but I had a room. That was something. That was more than I'd had yesterday. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night.